Welcome everybody, my name is Super Junk Gaming and this is a creepypasta. It's a very, very short creepypasta called Who Was Phone. I'm gonna do another one after this, so don't worry. I have another one called Hope Is Lost. It's SpongeBob creepypasta, so I'm gonna read the beginning part written by the whoever in the wiki reposted almost this pasta. So horrible, it's amazing creepypasta which became a staple of /x/ and inspired countless variations. The phrase "Who was phone" remains a favorite joke along /x/files. This is various narratives. So I'm gonna read it like it's typed. So you're with your honey and you're making out when the phone rings. You answer and the voice says, What are you doing with my daughter? You tell the girl, and she said, my dad is dead. Then who was phone? It's really, it is obviously one of the greatest creepypastas out there. This was on, the forums I got it from, not the creepypasta forums, but the other forums I got it from, the number one scariest creepypasta on there. I didn't really get it. I don't think it's that scary. It's simple, and it's good. It's not bad. And, yeah. So here's Hope Is Lost. It's SpongeBob. Hello, my name is... I'm gonna read it, obviously, word for word. I have to keep saying that. Hello, my name is Nicholas. Now, today I'm going to tell you a story of what may have seemed a typical day to any normal intern, but there was nothing normal about today. It was my first day as an intern at Nickelodeon Studios. They picked me up after receiving my associate's degree from ITT Tech. It was a stupid school, but it taught me what I needed for this chance. Running donuts and making coffee sucked, I can tell you that much, and it had its perks. Me being on the road of an editor, sometimes I received opportunity to see episodes before they were officially released. Today, I was invited into the editing studio, but you see, it was odd. There was no one in there. Normally, this would cost me my internship, but oh god, I couldn't resist the urge. It was overwhelming and compassing. Oh dear god, that feeling. As soon as I walked in, the door slammed behind me. I figured this was one of those somewhat cruel pranks the editors sometimes pulled on new guys. So, when the door locked, I figured this was some kind of punishment, and my heart slowly sank. My internship was in huge jeopardy. Oh, they probably already knew I was here. Panicking, I ran at the door with all my force, slamming into it with all my might. Now, not to boast, but I was not the weakest guy. I had been working out for the past 3 years, but dear Lord, there was something on the other side of that door. Some force stronger than the strongest man, making sure I couldn't leave until I did what I was sent in to do. Now, in my panic, I hadn't noticed the netbook, the chair, and the small table it was sitting on. In the disc tray, there was a blank CD. Usually, these were editing discs, completely sherry episodes that barely leaving productions. It just didn't have any marks on it or even a name. But something beckoned me, something as pushed me to the chair and forced me to sit. As I slowly pulled the chair back, my heart rate slowly increased. You could almost hear it in my chest. Thump, thump, thump. I slowly pushed the DVD and the tray shut. What? I slowly pushed the DVD tray shut. I don't know. Without any prompt or confirmation, it just started. Something seemed odd right away. Normally, it would open in VLC or Windows Media Player. However, this was odd. Stop. Okay, first note of this. This is a really good creepypasta so far. But this guy's favorite word is obviously odd. That's like in 2 or 3 sentences. That's 2 and 2 in the last 2 sentences. So, just saying sorry guys, hello. You've cleared up that it was odd. Just saying that. I'm going to go and edit this. It just opened with no video player. It seemed the computer itself was just a video player, but it couldn't be. It seemed just like any normal netbook the interns or staff carried. Or was it? Okay. As the title card flashed, I immediately see my first assumption was wrong. It wasn't a cherry or slightly edited build. They never had title cards. This was either finished or just ready to leave production. The title card seemed odd. 4. I never actually see anything like it. Instead of the usual fun font they used that popped and seemed colorful, of course appeal more to children, it seemed more gothic, something you would see in a horror film. The words and the title card made my heart sink farther. It had to be a joke, right? Why would somebody try to scare me this terribly, though? The words read, "You nosy intern, you shouldn't have come in here." And the usual happy bubble transition we were all used to was gone. The text just melted down the screen, almost like blood running down a wall, and it slowly faded into the show from a couple seconds of utter silence. It transitioned into one of the familiar openings, with SpongeBob slowly snoring in bed and Gary sleeping beside him on his newspaper. The blowhole of an alarm clock was there, and even the bed was. I began to feel relived. I remembered all this from where I was a kid. It seemed normal, but was it? Oh dear God, I was wrong. Forgive me, you must forgive me. I'm choked up just writing this. I wanted to forget this, but something compels me to share my story. I was expecting the blowhole to go off and SpongeBob to start his typical routine. Oh, how bad that thing annoyed me as a kid. But it didn't come. There must have been at least just 3+ minutes of SpongeBob snoring. Then something finally happened. It slowly started to pan onto his face. Oh, so slowly, waiting in the anticipation, just dying for something to finally happen. I would later greatly regret this decision. Oh, what I would give if it had just ended right then and there. As it finally reached deep into his face, you could clearly see his expression. It was one of horror, malice, like someone is in a terrible nightmare would have. His eyes almost seemed to say has been stitched shut. Then it had a transition, not the usual fade to black or the joyful bubbles, but something altogether much more sinister. It was a fiery transition, almost like the previous screen had just burned up. By all appearances, were now in SpongeBob's mind, in his dream, his nightmare. It appeared to be Bikini Bottom, but there was something wrong. Very, very wrong. The whole city seemed in shambles, and the horizon blood red. The buildings burning. SpongeBob was just walking down the road, a seemed typical path that he would normally take to the Krusty Krab. People around him, oh dear God, I still remember it, those blood-curdling screams. At this moment, I realized there was something very wrong, and this had no appeal to children. Blah! Most adults would find this a bit morbid at this point. The scream, oh the scream. It was one of someone in great pain, being tortured or slowly dying. A blood-curdling. I had to be like an idiot. Like a stupid. It seems like this paragraph had a lot of "oh dear God" or "oh something." Don't use that. I think he's gonna keep doing that. I see from right here, "oh God" already. At this point, I couldn't see who was coming from. Just SpongeBob walking slowly, silently, as the screaming slowly continued, getting louder and louder. Oh God! I almost wanted to claw my eyes out when he turned the corner. I saw the source of the screams. It was terrifying, inhuman, horrible. I'm sorry, I mixed up the two words. It was Patrick hammered into a stake, almost like the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But also his stomach, oh God, it had been torn open, his entrails slowly leaking out. I think it's slowly leaking. Not slow leaking. The look on his face seeing SpongeBob seemed relived for a moment. Almost as if his salvation had come. His eyes began to water just staring at SpongeBob. They almost beckoning. His eyes spoke for him. They screamed, "Please, oh God, please help me." When we transitioned over to SpongeBob, he now just stood there, staring back at Patrick, watching his friend slowly suffer and die. Patrick then began to weep slowly, as if he understood something that I, the viewer, did not. SpongeBob began to open his mouth. Slowly, in a low, almost satanic, demonic voice, he whispered, "Suffer, fat one. You, this whole town, brought this upon himself." And then he turned and slowly walked away. At this moment, I screamed out in horror, almost praying that someone would hear me. Someone would walk in, it would cost me my internship, but anything to end this. Now you may find yourself thinking, why don't you just stand up and attempt once more to escape? I couldn't. Something deep down inside me told me if I moved, I would regret it. I had to finish watching. I just had to. SpongeBob then continued down to the road, slowly approaching the Krusty Krab. In the background, you could now hear more screams. Some were horrible, blood-curdling ones. You could tell they came from one great agony. But there had been one new sound thrown in, a horrible, twisted laugh, one of great malice. Almost as if someone had been hunting an animal and thoroughly enjoying himself all too much. You could hear Oh. Sorry. I like dropped my iPod. You can hear them very distinctly fading away into the background as if they were chasing something in the other direction. You could hear them. Oh, even fading, even faded, it was still heart-stopping. Sorry, I can't. SpongeBob seemed unfazed, as if he was about almost used to it. You could now slowly hear clattering behind him, slowly breaking the mind-numbing silence. It was crawling slowly toward them. SpongeBob slowly turned, as if he expected this, and then, as he slowly turned face, his face slowly came into view. His eyes, they changed. They no longer seemed to be his normal, happy, joyful-looking eyes. They were blood-red, full of malice, hate, and anger. There was one would expect this face from a demon. Bleh! Even the devil himself would find this look fitting. I myself now slowly began to weep with no end to this horror in sight. His eyes now fixed on something. It was slowly transitioned over. It was Patrick. Dear God. Oh my God, forgive me. No human should it be forced to see that. His entire body was now missing, with his intestines slowly trailing behind him, the trail of blood behind him. What was left of his arms had huge holes in them, almost as if something had been torn out of them, then nails. Had he ripped himself off the stake? His face slowly came up. His eyes beckoned once more to SpongeBob. But this time they had said something different. He slowly began to speak, and I'll never forget those words. Kill me. Please. I'm sorry. We're all sorry. Just end it, please. I can't take the pain. SpongeBob responded with that blankish tone, even worse than before. You ask for forgiveness from me? Do you take me as your god? Will you receive no divine forgiveness from me, you see? It's my job to make you suffer. Burn, fat one. And with the flick of a wrist, arms, blankish arms, he seemed to just sprout and grabbed from the ground and grabbed a hold of him and tore him down in what seemed to be an endless blankish abyss. All the way down you could hear that blood-curdling scream from before. Oh God, no. And SpongeBob slowly turned as if nothing had happened. He let out a small evil giggle. By this point, I had almost been wishing for the same thing to happen to me, just so I wouldn't have to see this anymore. At this point, I was crying so hard I felt like a little girl. I felt weak, empty, as if I was about to throw up. As much as I wanted to, I couldn't choke anything out. SpongeBob then slowly approached, finally, the doors of the Krusty Krab. The path behind him, oh God, the usual cheery path to the entrance that had stakes all along it. Into them were hammered in the corpses of familiar favorite characters. Sandy, Mr. Krabs, Larry the Lobster, Pearl, Squidward, Mermaid Man, and Barnacle Boy, Mrs. Puff, and so on. And on their faces, they all too wore that expression of utter sorrow and horror, as if they had died crying in fear of what stood before them. When we then transitioned back to SpongeBob, who now reached the front door. Something happened out of this horrible nightmarish thing I was witnessing. The whole building began to shake, almost as if during an earthquake. The only light in the room blew out, and the power went out. I was now in the dark, alone, in the shaking building. I could hear my fellow interns flee, and the developers run out. Without a second thought of where I was, you could hear the car tires squeal as they raced away. Why had they been in such a hurry to escape? When I turned around I then turned back to the show, almost as if I was being forced to watch. He now stood alone in the Krusty Krab. All the lights were out, and there was an utter silence except for a small red glow coming from the door that usually led to the kitchen. That oh-so-familiar kitchen where SpongeBob usually stood making his delicacies. He slowly began to approach it, slowly in silence. As he reached it, he stood in the front of the door, almost as if himself didn't want to go in. Reproachfully, he slowly turned the knob and swung the door open. Oh God, how I wish I could unsee what I saw and heard. SpongeBob faced a blankish demon of indescribable horror, burning in a portal of what seemed to be blank itself. Was this the devil? Oh God, the fear that came over me in that moment as his mouth slowly opened. Did you make him suffer, son? It asked in the most blankest tone imaginable. One of extreme rage, anger, malice, hatred. SpongeBob replied, slowly saying, almost afraid to reply, Yes, Father. They cried, suffered, and burned. The feast of souls waits for you below. He replied simply, Good, son. Now back to your cage, and be gone with you. At that moment, I finally threw up all over my own lap. Something began to emerge from SpongeBob that his body almost slowly deflated, as it almost seemed to be human. Yep. Okay. Sorry. A dog, something. Oh god, I can't even find the words. Wait, so emerged from SpongeBob. Okay. It crawled towards the portal, and with a swift kick, its father kicked it into what appeared to be blank itself. Then it turned slowly, looked at me, the viewer, and quietly it mouthed something so subtle and quiet, but chilling in the core. It seemed as if it was speaking to me. It said, "Oh, don't worry. Your world is next. It'll suffer at your hands, as this one did his." It slowly transitioned over to SpongeBob, or it was just left of his corpse, just skin. "Oh, you'll all atone from what you've done. All of you, you're next." And with that, the computer itself slammed shut and burst into flames. As it slowly burned, I could only weep at this horror. This couldn't be real. Nick, wake up!" My eyes slowly flashed open. I was in the break room of the floor, about to tone my friend Tina, who said, "Oh, thank God you're okay. You just collapsed. You've been out for about 5 minutes." My whole body was rattled, broken almost. Turning to her, I had this uncontrollable urge. Turning to Tina, I said, "Don't thank God on this day. He won't save us. He has abandoned us, his abominations, his failed creations." Tina looked aghast, horrified, and she ran out screaming. I quickly got up and quietly left. And here I sit, writing my own story of the day, calmly. Maybe now I accept my place. And though I have work to do, isn't that right, Tina? Slowly turning to her dismembered body. "You're next," I end with this. "I am coming. I am his chosen slayer for this world, a messenger of Boop itself. And oh, I'm coming for you, each and every one of you, and you'll never stop me. Don't try to run or hide. I'll find you." Okay. It's just that was a long creepypasta, and it was really good. I'm creeped out. I don't want to go to sleep tonight, because I don't want this crazy jerk face to follow me into the night and kill me thanks to this. Hope is lost. This is a good creepypasta. This is Hope is Lost, and I totally forgot the other one. Who was phone? I don't know, but I'll put it in the tops. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.